President, yesterday I enjoyed Father's Day coaching my son's t-ball game. And at the end of the game, a group of parents came to talk to me. One of the parents said, you know, I've been reading the story about the craziness of the guy who lost the election, refused to accept the results, locked himself behind closed doors, shut down the cameras, shut down the media, shut out the lights. That was just crazy. Suspended the rule of law. I said, well, you know, Senator Nelson Smith. And he stopped me and he said, no, I'm talking about that despot in Iran. And of course, he was just trying to be funny. You know, it made me think about the similarities. And it made me think about how the fact that this is not funny. This is disgraceful. And this is not the way we're supposed to act here in America. It's not the way we're supposed to act here in this august body, the New York State Senate. And you know, I've read the accounts as well about this fact that the Democrats are refusing to show up to work. And we see it. And you know, the fact of the matter, Mr. President, they're not refusing to show up to work. They'll come to work. They've said so. They just have some conditions, stipulations. They'll come to work. They can get some power back. Personal power. Not power to be used for the good of the people in the state. Perks. They want perks. Then they'll come to work. They want to go back to the old ways. I know, Mr. President, that old ways don't die easily. That's what this is all about. They're not saying they won't come back to work. They're saying they'll come back to work if you let us hold on to the old ways. The old undemocratic ways which we saw for 6 months, which resulted in a disastrous budget, which resulted in a blank check to the NPA with no real benefits for the people. That's what this is all about. Let me answer your rhetorical question. What are they trying to hide? They're trying to hide this. They don't want the people of the state of New York to see this. I guess I wouldn't either. We were sent here to do the people's work, and they're somewhere else. It's pretty simple. They don't want the people back home that elected them, that pay their salaries. They don't want to see, they don't want those people to see those empty chairs with no real good excuse. I've read about this 31-31 deadlock. There's no deadlock. It was an election. And until you have 32 votes, the way our democracy works, you don't get to change that. You know, suppose after Senator Smith, when he was elected majority leader with 32 votes, suppose someone from the Democratic side of the aisle left office, for whatever reason, and they were left with 31. Would that be a reason for we on this side of the aisle to decide to boycott this chamber? Anyone in the press ask the Democrats why we were doing that? Wouldn't they rightfully come to us and say, why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? Sure, there's a technicality called quorum, but it's a shield, not a sword. Why do you have quorum rules? So that a few people can't secretively decide to sneak into this chamber and pass laws. That's why you have a quorum rule. Not so that duly elected members of the Senate can intentionally absent themselves from this chamber to deny the quorum, to use it as a shield against the people of the state. That's what's happening here. There's an election in this chamber. When that result sticks until there are 32 votes to change it. So until that time comes, show up to work. Now let's talk about where there is no deadlock. Senator Skelos mentioned some bills on the calendar today. One of them has 2490B. There's no deadlock here. There's no 3131. This is a great piece of legislation. Not my legislation. I didn't author it. It's not a Republican piece of legislation authored by a Republican. It's written by a Democrat, my good friend Senator Klein. He's a Democrat. I promise I won't use that as an excuse to vote against this bill. I want to vote for it. It's the one that provides notice to public housing authorities whenever a sex offender is released to public housing. I think if I were raising my family in public housing, I'd like to know when someone who is convicted of molesting a child moved down the hall. It would be pretty important to me and my family to know that. Evidently, though, my friends across the aisle believe there's somewhere better for them to be right now. Well, there's no place better than right here, right now, to pass this legislation, to protect kids. So let's stop using this technicality. Let's come together. I want to join my colleagues here and call on my friends across the aisle to come to this chamber. Let's start with that bill. Let's pass it, and let's see where it goes from there. I promise you, there won't be many 3131 deadlocks. And if we come to any, we'll work them out right here on the people's floor. That's where we ought to have this discussion. So I say this to my friends across the aisle. We can and will work in a bipartisan fashion. Your empty chairs beckon you. Your constituents summon you. And I beg of you to return to work.